But the talk I have prepared or in mind for tonight is on mindfulness. It's kind of like a Wild Heart traditional talk that I haven't heard in a very long time. So I kind of want to bring it back. It's been years since I've heard anybody talk about the 4 applications of mindfulness. The 4 applications of mindfulness. Before I go into that, my intention to talk about something classic like mindfulness was, we did the whole spooky Dharma thing. We're entering into November, but last month we did a lot of storytelling because we were doing October spooky Dharma, telling stories about Mara, the Buddhist devil, and talking about disembodied body parts with me and Roy. And then Dawn talked about Angulimala, the Buddhist serial killer. And then I talked about Kisa Gotami and the mustard seed. That's a heartbreaking story. So it was a lot of storytelling, and I appreciate a lot of storytelling because it's good to have some inspiration in the practice. And at the same time, to counterbalance this with some information, right? And so tonight may be a little bit more of a technical talk. But if you're anything like me, some of the information is pretty inspirational. Because when we hear these stories, it's like, oh, people that did this practice. And when we hear the information, like the how-tos, I get inspired because I'm like, I can do that. So what I want to talk about is these 4 applications of mindfulness, which are simple awareness, protective awareness, introspective awareness, and contemplative awareness. I'll go piece by piece through all of these. First, I want to talk about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? All right? And so Jon Kabat-Zinn, the creator of mindfulness-based stress reduction, and really like a predominant voice in the secular mindfulness movement, defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment non-judgmentally. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good definition for mindfulness. Peace and love to secular mindfulness, but I want to go for this like awakening mindfulness. Doing it for stress reduction is a great doorway in, but what's this like Buddhist mindfulness? And so somebody that I look up to in the Dharma, he's recently passed, but Bhante Vimalaramsi has a pretty solid definition for mindfulness. He says, mindfulness is remembering how to observe the mind's attention as it moves moment to moment and remembering what to do with any arising phenomenon. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's a rather open definition of mindfulness. So, okay, let's keep going further. What did the Buddha, the Buddha himself, kind of like the originator of these mindfulness practices, what was his definition of mindfulness? And it was, he didn't write one. Throughout all the discourses on mindfulness, there's so many rich traditions around mindfulness, but when it came to this is what mindfulness is, he never gave a definition, right? And I really appreciate that because when you're in mindfulness, you kind of know. It's almost like having a definition for falling in love. If you ask somebody, what's your definition for falling in love? Well, they're just going to say, oh, you get, fluttering in your belly. You get this like anxiousness, but it's totally awesome. And you wake up in the morning thinking about that person. What you get is a description of what falling in love is, not a simple definition of it. And so what did the Buddha offer? The Buddha offered many instructions around mindfulness. So predominantly in like the Satipatthana that I discussed earlier, and Anapanasati. So these lessons. So really, if you ask the Buddha, what is mindfulness? He'll just start giving you a lesson. And at the same time, I think it's really cool that the Buddha was a big proponent of mindfulness. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he called it the direct path to liberation for the ending of suffering. So we get liberation and the end of suffering. Hell of a sales pitch, right? And so, when we start looking at what mindfulness is, luckily we have these Buddhist scholars. And one particular Buddhist scholar of our time, Rupert Gethin, he went through the Pali Canon and looked up any time this word Sati appeared and wrote down what is the application of this word Sati. And if you don't know, this word Sati is the original word for mindfulness, S-A-T-I. It's a Pali word, a Pali. So Pali is a dead language that they recorded the old school Buddhist texts in. So this modern scholar went through all of the Buddhist texts, what we call the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the collection of teachings that were recorded based off of what the Buddha taught in the time that he was alive. And it's a hell of a lot of books. It's like 10 Bibles worth of lessons. We get a lot of lessons in early Buddhism. And so when he went through and looked up Sati, he discovered there's 4 ways the Buddha discussed mindfulness. And like I said, simple awareness, protective awareness, introspective awareness, and contemplative awareness. So let's dive in to all of these applications and all the ways mindfulness arises. And a reminder, as I step into these, don't take them lightly, because this is the direct path to liberation and the ending of suffering. In all 4 of these, not one isn't better than the other. When you do any of these 4 applications of mindfulness, they will lead you to awakening. And I'm not talking about someday. I'm talking about right here and now. You can have the relief of the liberation and the ending of suffering in this moment. So the first one, simple awareness. So looking at present time. Often mindfulness is described as present time awareness. So that's what this first application of mindfulness is simple awareness. Developing the skill to stay present. So how do you know that you're present? Right now, all of us, pay attention. What are you paying attention to? Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go. Yep. We come back to our senses. That's what this simple awareness is. That we notice hearing, we notice seeing, we notice smelling, tasting, touching. That's all we have. That's all of reality are brought up by these 5 senses. And so when we want to make sense of the world, we come back to the senses. And this is very simple, the sense of feeling the breath. This is typically where we start in meditation, feeling and knowing the breath. And I love the simplicity of this mindfulness of breathing, the simple awareness. We sometimes make it way too complex in this room, going over all these lists of the 5 aggregates and the 12 links of dependent originations and the Eightfold Path and all of these numbers and lists. And it's like, yo, this is simple. Why are we making it so complicated? Feel your breath. Feel the sounds. Let that mind empty. And come back to the simplicity of this. And in that moment, when you are connected and in harmony with whatever is present, that's it, liberation. There's no suffering in that moment. The lineage that I received my lay ordination in is called the Embracing Simplicity Order, under the Order of Venerable Panuwati. And I love that because I love simplicity. That in my favorite band is the Ramones. Why are they so good? Because they're so fucking simple. Let's just cut the fat out of this. 2-minute songs, hey ho, let's go. Right? And that's what this simple awareness is. The breath. Breathing in, know you're breathing in. Breathing out, know you're breathing out. Very simple. That's like the chorus of mindfulness. And don't bore us. Get to the chorus and just be with this breath. And as the mind goes into yada, 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 dependent origination, yada, 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 the marks of existence, nope, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Hey ho, let's go. Breathing in, know you're breathing in, breathing out, know you're breathing out. And embracing that simplicity of this practice. And that you're awake in that moment. You notice that? Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Just be simple about this. And so that is the first way. We typically look at mindfulness, and there's a great amount of relief in that. But, something happens. That demon I talked about last month, Mara, starts showing up. This creature that attacks our minds, figuratively, These thoughts, greed, hatred, ignorance, start to attack. So the second way we look at Sati, mindfulness, is protective awareness. Stand guard, protect your mind, right? And so as these thoughts start to arise, we can set a boundary with this mind. A lot about this practice is like loving kindness, is like motherly love, right? And sometimes with an ideal motherly love, you don't take shit. No, not right now, mind. Breaking the addiction to the thinking mind, especially when the mind has nothing good to say. So when the mind has nothing good to say, we can develop some agency to say nope, by developing mindfulness to come back to a chosen object. Once again, in mindfulness of breathing, if the mind shows up and it's telling you nasty things, you can say no. Nope, not going to do that. Back to the breath. And it's something beautiful happens when we start doing that and we notice the mind saying something terrible and I ain't about it. And then we say, oh, you're the cause of my suffering. I know you have this storyline about how this and that and that and this is the cause of my suffering, but it's actually you, pal. No, we ain't doing that. And you may start noticing some tendencies in your mind start to reoccur over and over again. One of which of mine, if I'm going to confess, I don't want to. My mind tells me I don't want to all the fucking time. And if I keep following that thought and believing everything that thought thinks, I get myself into a great deal of trouble. I resist life. I don't want to. Like literally things I love doing, like I'll go pay for tickets to a show. Look forward to the show for a month. And then when it comes time to go to the show, what shows up? I don't want to go. The hell, I want to go. But if I believe that mind, I'm going to stay at home. And to be fair, this is something the Buddha named as a type of craving. The craving for unbecoming, non-becoming, vibhava tanha. The craving for non-existence. And to be fair, that does lead me down a rabbit hole of non-existence. Right? I don't want to. You don't want to what? Anything. And that gets scary. So, this protective awareness can save my life. Say, nope, not right now. Let's come back. And so, to be fair, sometimes this I don't want to mind sneaks past the gates and comes in, makes himself at home in my mind. And so luckily we have this third way we look at Sati, of mindfulness, and that's introspective awareness. So introspective awareness is when we shine the light of mindfulness directly onto the thoughts. This is what we would call mindfulness of the mind. So the thoughts here, well, if it's going to be here, I might as well make friends with it. All right, I don't want to mind, come on in. This is what often we would say tea with Mara, these demonic forces in our mind. Can we just sit down and say, all right, let's have some tea. Let's talk. Let's hang. And so when I turn towards that I don't want to mind, I can develop some introspection, some insight into a lot of things. Like I said, all of these lead to awakening, even sitting with the mind that wants to kill me. I can develop that awakening to the part of my mind that wants to kill me. No, I don't want to mind. I see you. And when I sit with that I don't want to mind, what I discover is really the nature of the impersonal nature of life, anatta, that we would call it. That is totally impersonal, that the mind says this thing. We discover a thought is a thought. Nothing more, nothing less. Just like the eyes see, the ears hear, the lungs breathe, the mind thinks. It's just part of having a human body. And so discovering that impersonal nature that this mind arises. Okay, there you are. But then our investigation can continue. You know, we could start seeing where these things come from. Everything that is present has a past that led it to this moment. There is a chain of causality into this very moment. And looking at that profound chain of causality to be present with a terrible thought process and be like, oh, where did you come from? Okay, let me understand you. And even practices like modern practices like internal family systems therapy, a lot of times these aggressive mind states, they're protectors of underlying wounds. And to make it simple, sometimes the head protects the heart. And many times in my life, I know my heart was broken, but my mind was protecting a brokenheartedness. And it just became a habit over time in my early life to really be like, I don't want to. And now I have a neural habit, the karma of my mind, that says I don't want to. I was like, oh, there you are. You know, how many times in middle school, even high school, it's like I felt like I didn't matter. You know, my own desires were stifled. What I wanted wasn't important to most of the people around me. Had so many coaches, teachers, and other people in my life telling me how I should be living my life. You know what? I didn't want to. And it's just like anytime I stood up for myself, I was punished. But I still thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And what one thinks and ponders upon becomes the inclination of the mind. I spent years thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And now I grow up to be an adult that sits still and goes, I don't want to. And it's like, well, yeah, I do. I'm not a kid anymore. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I don't want to. Oh my gosh. And we understand that is a habit of the mind. This is what karma is. You know, karma is a confusing word, but in Buddhist tradition, it's just understanding habit. And so when we start understanding habit, okay, there's a lot of agency and power in that. And that leads me to this fourth way we look at mindfulness, which is contemplative awareness. Or I think what did he say? It's intentionally forming concepts. So this next one is, you know, a lot of times in mindfulness we think thinking's against the rules. No thinking in mindfulness. If you have a thought, you're bad at mindfulness. You're a bad Buddhist, and cut it out. Make sure to not ever have a thought. But in this fourth aspect of mindfulness, we start to understand thoughts aren't the enemy. And so we start understanding karma and habit, and then we start being empowered. And this contemplative practice of intentionally forming concepts. So, we have two minds. We have the non-intentional mind, and we have the intentional mind. The non-intentional mind is that mind that thinks thoughts based off of past habits. The unintentional mind thinks thoughts all on its own. I'll be sitting around, I don't want to. Did I think that on purpose? No, but it just showed up all on its own. Things like going to the grocery store, waiting in line. Hurry the fuck up. Who thought that? Oh shit, you know, I didn't think that. But you can think a thought on purpose. That is the intentional mind. And all karma comes from intention. So right now you can think of a red balloon, you know, on purpose. And so when we start understanding you can intentionally think thoughts on purpose, what a fucking power. Because we can start thinking thoughts that are helpful. And this is where the practices of the heart arise. Things like loving kindness, things like compassion, things like sympathetic joy, and things like equanimity, what we call the Brahma Viharas. And so what one thinks and ponders upon becomes the inclination of the mind. And so in loving kindness meditation, we say, may I be at ease, may I be at peace, may I be kind and gentle with myself, may I be filled with loving kindness, just to incline that habit, just kind of get used to thinking helpful thoughts. But, sometimes it's a little bit more than that. Sometimes it's just, I don't want to, and there's pain underneath that I don't want to. And it's like, how do I treat myself in that moment I'm in pain? Do I turn on myself, judge myself, hate myself? We can put that in the unwholesome category. It doesn't work. Trust me, you can't hate yourself out of a hole. You can't hate yourself into becoming something that's eventually lovable. It doesn't work. So, what can we do? Contemplate that the Buddha offered this message. As a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart shall one cherish all beings. Can we cherish all beings in this moment with that motherly love? That's kind of hard, but I think it's worth contemplating. Of like, how would an ideal mother be treating me right now? And can I treat myself that way when I'm in pain? When I'm unmotivated? When I'm hopeless? Can I really just be like, oh, sweet baby, I love you? And start talking to myself like that. I'm proud of you. I forgive you. It's okay to feel the way you feel. I'll love you no matter what way you feel. And if we start creating that habit, it will become the natural inclination of the mind and it will start being unintentional. It's the weirdest thing when it starts happening. Years and years of practice, and then I find a wholesome thought just pop into my mind on accident. Like, oh, that's awesome. That's nice. And so this is the way we develop that power of ending the craving, the reactive craving, and this will lead us to liberation and the ending of suffering when we create a beautiful environment within. And it takes work. It takes that contemplation of how do I really want to treat myself today? And so these are the paths of mindfulness, the 4 applications of mindfulness. Simple awareness, let's keep it simple. Protective awareness, take no shit. Introspective awareness, be kind and interested. And contemplative awareness, notice that power you got. Notice the power to nurture yourself and create that karma of nurturing within you. Okay?